Start now.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay, so that's what we have planned. So probably I'll start with that, and maybe if you feel that is more of in finance, you can let me know. Or if you need more information, I can provide more information as well. So that's what we have planned for today, and
Sure.
then we'll start with model specific configuration. That is, we'll start with inventory. So
Okay.
I'll just create the inventory organization and then we'll create the item and this thing because the first module that I have with me is procurement.
Okay.
But though I have it as a procurement, I'll need the item and then I'll need the business unit and all those details will be required in terms of creating the transaction in the procurement module. Okay, so before that, I will need these configurations in place. So we'll start from scratch. Okay.
Sure.
Yeah. So here, if you see, so this is the landing screen of Fusion application. So now here, if you see, so I'm seeing procurement, I'm seeing the help desk, I'm seeing the service, and then here, if you see the product management, all those details are there. But usually, you will not have all these information. So before that, so when this instance is provisioned, provisioning meaning Oracle will allocate the instance. So how do we identify that this is the instance that is specific to this customer? It is using this.
Okay.
So if you see EUTH, so this is how we will identify. So if this is EUTH for this customer, so
Okay.
probably EWVT, it is for another customer. So basically using that you will identify, or if you are trying to raise a service request. So let's say you are trying to apply a patch or you are having an issue or a bug. So for which you are trying to raise a service request. So this is the information that we will input. So using that Oracle will try to understand what is the issue. Okay, so which means that this stays as your uh, core thing in order to understand whether this particular environment is related to customer A or customer B or customer C. So it is understood. And then the next thing that you will look at is this. So here, if you're seeing dev or test, which means this is not an production environment. So if I remove this and if I have this as an EUTH dot source demo or probably let's say fa dot oracle demo dot com. So which means that this is my production environment.
Okay.
So this is how we will understand the environment. Okay, and then on the right side, if you click this particular option, so wherein you have about this application. So if you click this, you will get your latest version. So the version that I'm using is 23D, so which is
Okay.
latest. So after this, we did not have release. So the way that Oracle will give the release is that every quarter we'll have a new version. So this is for the till the December month. So that is 23D. So if we are looking at probably Jan or Feb, so we'll have another release. So that is 24A. Okay, so which means A is for first quarter. So similarly, you'll have the releases. Okay, so now looking at the certification, so it is valid for 1 year for this reason because if you are writing an exam, so let's say you are writing inventory implementation specialist, so which
Okay.
means this particular exam will be validated against this version called 23, so which will be
Okay.
valid for 1 year. So if you feel that you will need this exam again, let's say in the year 2025, then you will have
Okay.
to write this exam again. So which will not be
Oh.
against 23D, it will be against 25D.
Okay.
Okay. So that is how those exams and these things will go. So that is against a particular version that I'll be writing this exam.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's about the version. And then this, as I said, so this comes from my role called application implementation consultant. So I'll be looking at that in detail. Okay, so okay, that is what it is. And Other things maybe we'll discuss it a bit later. So before that, I'll just talk about the instance basic information. Okay. So now, if the instance is provisioned, so I'll have this particular address and my email in the registered email. So let's say IT manager has been registered for this. So IT manager will get an email from Oracle saying this is your URL, and they will also give the default username and password. So that is kind of an sysadmin password and the credentials. So you can log in into that application and you can create your own credentials, which means your username and password. So where do I create it? So if you see on the left hand side tab, so you have hamburger. So here, if you come down, so you have something called tools. So
Okay.
under tools, so we have security console. So if you click security console, so this is one place where you manage your user and the roles and access. All those information is managed here. So if you want to customize your role, so let's say I'm trying to only create the item. So I'm not doing other activities, which means managing the items, all those things is managed by some other person. So I will not need that access. So what will I do? So I'll give access only to create the items. Okay. So all those activities can be done here. So if you see here, so I can say create role, or I can search for a particular role and then I can attach that particular role to the user. Okay.
Okay.
So before that, how do we create user is that if you click this option, so you have option to add user. So this is the screen if you want to search for a particular user that is already created or the existing user. So here you can search. So for instance, I'm searching for bunny, so which I can
Okay.
identify here. So this is an hyperlink. If you click this, this will take you to inside this particular screen. So wherein you can see all the associated roles. So here if you see, so I have IT security manager. So that is the reason I'm able to access this option called security console. If this role is not given, I'll not see this option of adding the user or adding the roles to the user. Okay. And
Okay.
as I said, application implementation consultant. So this gives me option to do the configurations in the system, that is setup and maintenance. Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I'll just show you how do we create a new user. Okay. So here, on the left hand side, if you see, so whether this is a worker or this is just an user that we are creating. Okay. So for now, I'm just giving this as none. So there is another option also in terms of creating user. Okay. So that I'll show once we create the implementation project. Okay. So there we can give an option of creating this user automatically, because what will happen is that, so here I'm not associating this worker, which means that if I'm not implementing payroll or the HCM module, so that is fine with this. But if I'm using HCM module, which means that this particular user will also be created as an employee. So in this case, so after creating user here, I will have to go to the employee screen and associate this user credentials there again in order to sync with my employee and the user that I'm creating it here. Okay,
Okay.
so that's the reason if HCM module is implemented, we will use that particular screen, but I'm not using HCM. Let's say I'm using only the supply chain modules and
Mhm.
finance modules. So in that case, I don't need that particular screen to do that. So what I'll do is that I'll simply create it from here, and probably if I want to link it at later point in time. So let's say after 6 months, customer decides that they wanted to go for HCM as well. So now what I will do, so I will take this user and link it there manually. Okay, so
Okay.
that's the option that we will do in case this scenario is seen in the business. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so this one creating is only for the purpose of the user or the login or the this access to the application. Okay, so now let's say let me give a name maybe. So email address, though it is not mandatory, if at all I wanted to reset my password,
Right.
so there are two ways that I can manage, and also this stays as an notification in terms of receiving through email. But if
Yes.
I don't give this email address here, which means that system will not give me the email notification, but still I'll be able to see it here in this in application notification. I'll be able to see. So now I don't have any such notification. So we'll see how this notification is seen. So
Okay.
see the FOI, that is information notification and actionable notification. But this notification through email is received through this option. Okay. And also if I want to reset my password, so there are two ways. So I can come to this screen and I can say so there will be an option to reset it. So this I'm creating as a new user, so I'm not seeing that option. But if I have created the user already and I'm trying to access that particular user, I'll see the option of resetting it. Okay, so there
Okay.
I can say I can change it to probably welcome at 1 2 3 or whatever it is. So I can do that. So the
Okay.
second option is that similar to our Gmail. So here I'll have option of clicking on the forgot password. Okay, either forgot password or the forgot username. I can do that.
Hmm.
So which will trigger an email to this email address which I'm giving here,
Okay.
and from there I can click and I can create my own password. Okay, so
Okay.
that's the use of having this email address. But
Okay.
this is not mandatory. If at all I want to control in terms of I don't want to give access to user to reset their password. So wherein it should be routed through this approval, and then the once the manager approves, and so when I say approval, so this is offline of the system, okay, which is
Okay.
through the email. So once this is approved, so this administrator will reset the password. So for that scenario, I'll not give this email address. Okay.
Okay.
So I'll just say this is welcome. If this is welcome at 1 2 3. Okay, so I'll just add role. So let me add application implementation consultant role. So which will allow me to access my setup and maintenance area. Okay, and here if you see, so we have something starts with, so this is your role name, and whatever you are seeing without highlighting, so that is your role code. Okay, so if you look at your role code, so whatever starts with ORA, so that is your standard role given by Oracle. But others, if you see ASM, so these are custom roles. So why am I choosing this standard role is that whatever the option that is given by Oracle, so all those options will be there in this particular role. But here in the custom role, so probably I will not know what is excluded or what is included. So that is the
Okay.
reason I'm picking this option. Okay. So this is how we will identify whether this is standard role or the custom role.
Okay.
So I'll just select this, and this is IT security manager. Okay, so again I'm selecting ORA.
Okay.
Okay, also I will add employee. Okay, so now there are two things. So if I'm not added as employee, so that there are certain modules which will not allow me to do the transaction if I'm not an employee. So I will associate this one. And in terms of procurement, I will need two more roles.
Okay.
So one is buyer. So I'll talk about buyer there when we see the procurement module. Okay, so wherein this particular role is needed, and there is a setup called procurement agent. So for which we will have to associate the business unit in terms of adding this, and then we'll have to go to the procurement screen to create, either it could be our requisition or RFQ
Okay.
negotiation or the procurement. So whatever the transaction that we wanted to create inside this module, So we will need this particular option because if I'm creating this transaction, so I will be considered as buyer in this case.
Okay.
Okay, so that's the reason I'm attaching it now. So I can add it at later point in time also, but I'm just adding it now because we are creating the user. So I'll just add whatever the role that is needed for the procurement user. Okay, so I'll just say done for now. Let me add the procurement manager also. Let me add for now procurement application administrator. Just say add. Okay. Yeah. So now I have created one user and these are the roles that I have given, which means that this particular user will be able to do the setups. This particular user will be able to add more users and attach the roles, customize the role, all those things he'll be able to do. And if I come down, this particular user is added as an employee, so he'll be able to do the purchase transaction as well, since the buyer and the procurement role is also given. Okay,
Okay.
so I'll just say save and close. Okay, so let me log out on this user and I'll log in using BuddyPower and we'll do our remaining setups using that particular user.
Okay.
Okay, so this is the user, okay, that I got. So now the next step is, so once the instance is provisioned, so as I said, we will create our user with a password, okay, so which we have created it. So the next step that we will do is that, so we will create project, the implementation project. So for that, I like to go to the setup and maintenance. So now the setup and maintenance are FSM. Okay, so in short, we call this as FSM, setup and maintenance. So this is one screen where I can do my all configurations. So when I say
Okay.
all configuration, which means that it includes my procurement, inventory, order management, or if I'm talking about finance module, AP, AR, GL, all those modules I can do it from here itself. So this is
Okay.
one place I can do configurations for all the modules. Okay. So if you see here, I have it. Okay, so before that, so I'll just tell you, so how do we enable this offering? Okay, so now, so this is a test environment. So we have already enabled this offerings. So that's the reason we are seeing this. But if I'm looking at for the first time, so I'll not look at the same way. So here if you see, so I have something called change feature opt-in. So this is where basically I'll tell the system that what are the modules that I'm going to implement. So how do I know that these are the modules that I will have to implement? So this is basically based on the understanding that we have taken it from the customer. So now
Okay.
they will tell us what are the modules they have subscribed. Okay, so those are the ones that we will enable. Because what will happen is that if it is test environment, at least it's okay. We will get a notification email saying that this particular subscription is enabled in the test environment. But if this is in the production environment without subscription, if I have enabled it, so Oracle will start billing automatically and it's just the notification that we will get, but the billing will get started. So that's the reason we should make sure that whatever the module that is subscribed, only those are enabled here. Okay. So if you see here, I'm seeing only the compensation management. The reason being here I have selected compensation management, I believe. So let me just go back. So here if you see, I have selected this as compensation
Yeah.
management. So I'll just go back and select for the procurement. Okay. So now let me go to change future opt-in. Okay, so now I will see the procurement related offerings. Okay, so this I have enabled, but for the first time will not see this enable checkbox. So I'll have to enable this checkbox. And if I come down, I'll have features, which means
Okay.
that let's say I'm doing this supplier portal. So if I want to enable, so I'll have to enable this checkbox. And if I click this features, so here I will have option to see whether I wanted to see the profile change management. So I can enable this. But in case I don't want to use this option of change management for supplier profile, so simply I can disable this option. Okay, so which means each features can be enabled or disabled. So based on the license that we have opted for.
Okay.
Okay, so this is for the procurement. So similarly for the inventory, order management, other modules as well. Okay, so it applies for the all the modules, same process. Okay, so I'll just say done. Okay, so now we have given or we have selected and enabled this particular offering. So offering is nothing but modules here. Okay, so when I say module, it is the procurement that we are talking about here. Okay, so now what are the prerequisites to start this particular configuration? The first thing is that, as I said, I will need my ledger and then I will need my business unit. Okay, so these are the two things I will need in terms of starting my basic configurations in procurement. Okay, so for that, what should I need is that first thing is that I'll need an implementation project. But this is not mandatory that we will need to create this, but there are certain scenario where we will need this particular option instead of looking at here. So this is kind of a shortcut wherein you can just search. So for example, if I'm looking at the procurement foundation, so these are the mandatory information or the setups that I will need to do. So here if you see, I will see the required task. Okay. So this I can select it from here and I can complete my configuration. But if I'm looking for the other setup which is not mandatory, so I can just say all tasks. So there are some cases where I'll not see all the setups here. So for
Okay.
those scenarios, what I will have to do is that I will have to go to manage implementation project. Okay, so that is when I'll go there and search for the task that I'm looking for. Or
Mhm.
if I want to search for a particular task, so also I have an option to search as a global search. So this we call it as a global search because this is not specific to the module. So let's say I'm trying to look for the procurement payment terms. So let's say I'm creating an advance for which I will create the purchase order. Okay. So against this purchase order, based on the milestone, I wanted to basically release my payments. Okay. So how do I achieve this? Using the option of payment terms. Okay. So where I'll say if this milestone one is completed, so I'll release 30%. Milestone two, I'll release another 30%, and final milestone I'll release remaining 40%. So this is the agreement that I have it with the vendor. Okay, so now in terms of configuring the system, I will have to do the payment terms first. So let's say I don't know what is the exact place that I wanted to search for. So I'll just say it is payment term. So system will give me whether I'm looking for payment terms as a generic, or I'm looking for receivable payment term, or the payable payment terms. Here if you see, the more options will be there. So I'll just click this option called manage payment terms. Okay, so here I'll have lot of payment terms that is created. So this I'm looking at because this is in the test environment. If not, I will see this immediate and other two or three options. Okay, so if I want to create new payment terms, of course I can go ahead and create new. Okay, so this is about your global search, wherein if you are not able to search a particular setup, you can come to this place and search for
Okay.
the option that you are looking for. So which
Okay.
will give you the task and the business objects as well. So these are the business objects. Okay, so for example, if I'm looking for subscription based payment term. So if I click this particular business object, I'll see this particular term or the task. Okay, so that's about the global search that we have it here. Okay, and then so there are certain scenario wherein if you're especially when you're in implementation project, so we will not do the configuration all from the scratch, because the reason being, if you see this setup that we are looking at, so this will not be done in 1 day or 2 days. So this will take time in terms of configuring the system, at least a week time for one module. Okay. So now the way that I will do is that it's not that going to create it manually, because when I do cutover, okay, so before that, what exactly is cutover is that, so when I say cutover, meaning I have completed all the activities in the test environment. So that is my system integration is done. So let's say I have an requirement that I wanted to integrate my item creation from my other application. Okay. So this item will be created in my third party application, and I'm bringing this data into Oracle. So Oracle will import this particular item. Okay, so this is through inbound. So what we will use for this inbound process is that there is an SOAP UA. So basically based on that I can use so there are specific APIs, those are available in the system. So
Okay.
using that I am importing this particular item from that particular system. Okay, so now
Okay.
I will have to do the system integration testing whether the flow is working fine. So I will need this SIT, and then user will test it if everything is fine. Okay, that is UAT, and then I have my data migration activity. So once the data migration activity is also completed, so then what I will have to do is that I'll have to get sign up from the customer. Once the sign up is received, then I will have to do the same thing that I have done in this particular environment, that is test environment or the development environment. So now I cannot do all from scratch, because here if you see, so everything is done. So the time that I will have is that to the maximum of 2 to 3 days. So 3 days,
Okay.
when I say 3 days, it is inclusive of Saturday, Sunday. If I'm dealing with Indian customers, so probably let's assume that Saturday and Sunday is holiday. So now in this
Okay.
case, I will do my cutover on, let's say, Friday evening, end of the day, like 7 or sometime. So this is when I'll start my activity in terms of doing the setups or doing the data migration. So now if I do the configuration from scratch, so I'll have to do it. So this again involves the effort in terms of doing the setup. So I'll not do it manually. So what are the options that I have here is that, so I can import my configurations. So if you see here, so I have something called manage configuration packages. So I can export this in CSV or any other format. Okay, and what I can do is that I can import this particular configuration package as it is into my production environment. So which ensures my configurations are done within the time of let's say 30 minutes or to the max 1 hour. So between this time I'm able to complete the entire configuration, not only for the procurement, it is for the what do you call, order management, procurement, inventory, all those supply chain related setups. Okay, so now
Okay.
once this configurations are done, so then I will do the data migration. So again, data migration, since I have done it in the UAT or the development environment, Just give me 1 minute.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, sorry. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what I was talking about. The after cutover activities. So basically, you will do the data migration. So since I have done it already in the development environment, so I'll have the files also ready. So when we say data migration, so module specific, we will talk about the data migration. So what are the things that we will have to look at? So because it's not that we are getting the data from the customer and we are loading as it is, will not that load that way. So for instance, now since I'm looking at my what do you call the PO specific information, so there are certain things that I will have to look at. So first thing, so whether I'm going to, so first thing is that on the data migration strategy. So how are we going to import this particular transaction? So whether we are going with the open transactions or whether going with the historical transactions. So the difference between your open transaction and historical transaction is that. So let's say so again I'm taking Indian customer. Okay. So in this scenario, so my period or my calendar starts from April and ends at March. Okay, so now if I'm doing this migration activity till March, which means I'm not considering my historical transaction in this case, because what we will recommend as a best practice is that so close as much as POs that you can do, whatever the open POs. So when we say open POs, which means that either I have received the item but I have not invoiced it, or I have just created the purchase order but I have not received the item. So these are the transactions that we are calling as open purchase orders. Okay, so these are the open purchase orders that we'll be looking at. So this is one thing that we will do if at all my data migration strategy, which tells me that I am basically importing only the open transactions. Okay, but what if I have historical transactions? So when I say historical transaction, which means that the transaction that I have created in my legacy system, irrespective of the status of this particular transaction. So I could be probably invoiced it as well. So I wanted to look at that data. So that is what we call it as the historical data.
Okay.
Okay. In this case, it is purchase order. So this purchase order might have created and also it might have received and also this might have invoiced also. So now the status of this purchase order will be in closed. Even though it is closed, so I will get it because I'm talking about the historical transaction. So this
Okay.
historical transaction as a practice, we will not take it more than 3 months because even the
Okay.
3 months data we will not suggest because this is time consuming activity and there will be certain constraints in terms of time and then providing the data. So all those factors are there. So considering that, we will not suggest it. We will suggest to go with open transactions, which will
Okay.
avoid time and the verification can be done. And moreover, the historical transaction will not be required if we
Yeah.
are making it live on 1st of April. So when will I
Yeah.
need this historical data? So probably let's say I have missed my milestone that is on 1st of April. I did not make this system live. So probably I have crossed April and May. So now the latest plan for me is to go live on let's say 1st of June. Okay. So now what I will do, I will do the open transactions first and then I will have to import my historical transactions as well. So now here I will have to also check if this particular transaction, this is open transaction, it is included in my historical transaction because this will lead to double entry.
Okay.
So let's say purchase order one is to be entered either in open transaction or in historical transaction. So these details I'll have to validate first and then I'll have to see if the format is fine and the informations are fine and then again I'll have to check with my trial balance data as well and then I'll have to check with my accounts payable that is invoice and the other details because I will create my purchase order or I will load my purchase order. After this, the finance guy will be taking care of matching this particular invoice and completing the invoice activity. So this particular activities is only for our this thing historical transaction. So
Okay.
when we talk about the open transaction, it is only the open purchase orders that we will import. Okay. So this is the process that we will do, and the best practice is that to have only the open transactions in the system, not the historical transaction. But if business insists, then we will have to do it. But again, this is a time-consuming activity. So now I'll come back to this point wherein we talked about the data migration activity inside this 3 days. Because in this 3 days, I'll have to do the same activity. So this is the reason I'm doing all these activities in my development at the test environment. Okay, so since I have my files ready with me and it is also validated with these customer or the business users. So what I will do, so I will use the same file and I'll just load it. So I'll show how we load the POs in the system. Okay.
Okay.
So that's the same process that we will do in production as well. So using
Okay.
that, we'll be able to do the complete set of activities in 2 days and one day we will use it for our internal review and get it confirmed by the user and we'll get the final sign off. Once the sign off is received, we will announce that the system has went live. Okay. So this is the process that we will do. Okay. So now this is the option that we will use if at all I want to create my configuration. So now in order to migrate this configuration as it is to my production environment, so I should make sure that my setup doesn't have the additional or the dummy data in the system. So let's
Mhm.
say I have created this business unit saying business unit A, B, C. But now the business unit C, this is nothing but just to check some functionality. So I have used this particular business unit, but this cannot be migrated as it is. Okay. So now, if I have planned to migrate it from this one configuration package, I should not create any test data in the system. Okay, so I'll
Okay.
just show how this configuration package will look like. So if I say add, so here I can select my project. So this is where I told the implementation project, it's not mandatory, but there are certain activities wherein I will need my implementation project. Okay, so we did not create implementation project till now, but if I am creating a new implementation project, so which means that I will select here. Okay, so the reason being, it's basically the objects that we'll talk. So when I say object, this is nothing but each setup line we are considering as an object. Okay, so
Okay.
system import or export this object and it will keep it in an RAR file. So using that, we can import it into different application. Okay. So first we
Okay.
will create one implementation project. Okay, so to create that, so here on the right hand side, if you click this task list, so you'll have option to say manage implementation project. So
Yes.
here I can say create new. Okay, so maybe we can just give a name for this. Okay, so now by default this will be assigned to this particular username. Okay, so this is the username, and if you have a timeline or if you know the actual project deadlines, so probably you can give your start date and end date also. So let me just give only the start date. I'm not giving the end date right now, so probably we'll see at later point in time. So how to create it? Okay. So now I have two options. So I can just click next and select my offering, or I can say save and open project. So next, if you click it, so the screen will load. So there will be few performance issues since this is the test environment. So I'm just saying save and open project.
Okay.
So both are same whether I'm selecting there or I'm selecting here. So that is the option. Okay.
I
So
had
now,
a question here, Arun.
sorry.
I have a question here.
Yeah, tell me.
So, is it like for per customer we'll create one project, or it depends, like we may create multiple projects honestly?
No, it depends whether so for one customer it's not so in terms of supply chain it is for one customer we'll create one project only. Since
Okay.
it is test environment we are having multiple projects. But
Okay.
if we are talking about finance, we have certain activities that we will have to do in terms of loading the asset calendars. So for
Okay.
that, I will need another implementation project created. So again, so that's why I said depends. So for us,
Okay.
it's only one project that we will create. We will not create multiple projects.
Okay. Fine.
Okay, because if I'm using this as it is, which means that the data I'm loading, it's for the entire object. So that's the reason when we are loading any data using that managed package configurations, so we will make sure that we are including only the objects that we wanted to load the data in the system. Okay, so for that we will create the second implementation project, which will be a dummy. But whatever we have created now, so this is your actual implementation project.
Okay. So within this project, we will create all the required configurations that is required
Correct,
based on the business requirement. Okay.
correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so I have created this project, and the next step is to attach or add the offering. It could be offering or it could be task. Okay. So if it is subtask, you will see it in the task list. So I'll say this is offering. So now since I have selected offering, so I'm seeing these options. So that is whatever offering that is there in the system. So I'll be able to select it. Okay. So in this case, so firstly I'll select the procurement. So when I say apply, so I'll see that added here in the task list. Okay. So I'll have to expand to see the, so this is the option to expand. So if I expand, so I'll be able to see all those related configurations in the system. Okay. So let me add maybe the order management as well.
So usually customers will get the license based on these offerings only, or they'll get it like SCM, ERP, pillars, like that.
No, this is how they will get. So they will get one for procurement, one for order management, and probably they will have it one for the self-service and then the supply chain. So this is how basically you will have. So whatever you are seeing here, so this
Yeah.
is your subscription basically.
Okay. Okay.
And similarly, if you see here, so the finance, if you see, this is one license for finance. Yeah,
Yeah.
financials.
Correct.
This is one license. So inside this, I will have payable, receivable, all those sub modules inside this. But
Okay.
for us, it is a different license. One for procurement, one for this thing.
Okay.
But for finance, either it is finance or the finance self-service. Finance self-service is nothing but expense module.
Okay. And it's, let's say that they have the license for the procurement. So
Okay.
within procurement, like whatever modules are there, customers are billable for all those modules. So it's
Correct.
up to the customer whether they want to use those features or not, but
Correct.
it's built on the offering.
Correct. Correct. Okay. So I have added four offerings to this particular project. Okay.
Yeah.
So now here, if you see, so I am seeing the task. Okay, and then I have the scope, and then I can edit this particular status. So the reason why I'm having this option is that to track this particular implementation. So whether I'm going on track or I'm missing something or I should take some action. So all those information I can track using this. So how do I
Okay.
do that? So probably let's say I am so in a project, so I'll have separate consultant for financials, then separate consultant for procurement. So there are certain projects where one consultant will handle procurement, order management, and inventory, and
Mhm.
there are certain scenario where a company like Accenture, so they will have one consultant for procurement, one consultant for order management. So similarly, okay, so
Okay.
that depends on the company.
Okay.
So now, the first thing that I will do is that, so I'll just expand this. Okay. So now, let's say here I'm having one consultant, so who will
Mhm.
handle this particular activity, that is tax configuration. Okay.
Okay.
What I will do is that I'll select this particular task and I'll say assign task. Okay.
Right.
So when I
Task.
say
Okay.
assign task, I can assign one particular user or I can assign multiple users also, and I can set the due dates. Okay, so let me just assign this user.
We have all these privileges because we added that administrator role to this user. Or?
Yeah, correct. So
Okay.
this we are seeing it because we have added this application implementation consultant role.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, so now if I want to set a due date for this particular configuration, I can set it here. So probably let's say I wanted to complete this by 29th of December. So I'll just say 29th of December and I'll do save and close. Okay. So which means that this tax configurations will be completed over a week's time. So I'll just
Okay.
make this as 29 December, and who will do this is that BuddyPower. So this is the
Okay.
user who's going to create. Okay.
Okay.
So now if you see, this is assigned to BuddyPower, and we can also see the due date. So if I
Yeah.
want to change probably due date by this thing, so I can change it. But as a consultant, I'll not be able to change it because this is controlled by manager. Okay. So then if you see here, so I have something called scope. So scope is something specific to the inventory unit or business unit or the ledger. So let's say I'm just trying to select a scope here. Since this is tax configuration, I'm looking at the tax regime. So let me just go to bit up and I'll show probably for the ledgers. So here, if I select the scope, so this should be probably the legal entity. Okay. So now I'll have to select my ledger. So scope meaning exactly. So for which entity or the which ledger or which inventory unit or which business unit I'm trying to make this particular configuration. Okay. So this is where we are setting for this unit. I'm doing this particular setup. Okay. So now
Okay.
the scope is also because there are certain big projects. So project would be at least costed over $50 million. So there are
Yeah.
projects which Accenture handles. Okay, so because here if you see, so it's not that one entity that we will implement. So probably they will spread across multiple countries. So
Mm-hmm.
now, one particular team will do this configurations for one country, and another team will do it for another country. And there
Okay.
are certain scenarios wherein I will have to do it for one or two countries, and this particular team will do it for this particular solution for the entire country. Okay,
Okay.
so it works that way. So that's the reason we are selecting the scope as well to make sure that we are doing it for the right option that we have selected. Okay.
Okay.
So, so that's the reason we are assigning this. So this we are seeing as null because we did not assign it for this particular task. So we assigned it for task configurations. Okay. So if I come down, so I'll see the assign to due date and then the selected scope. All those
Yeah.
information I can see there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So now if I want to start this particular configuration, so I can simply select go to task, which is going to start with the configuration. Okay.
Okay.
So before that, so we'll just see what is this implementation project. So so at high level, these are the things that we will track.
Okay.
Okay. So now if I don't know the exact navigation that I'm looking for, so let's say I wanted to check for the primary ledger, so I can just
Okay.
enter here and click enter or click on this particular search icon, so which will give me these three options. So because I have given option of selecting it from procurement or manufacturing or the financials. Okay,
Oh.
so I can select any of this and I can start the configuration, but I don't want to do it at this point. So let me just clear this.
Okay.
Okay. So that's about assigning the particular consultant and making sure that this is the due date and selecting the scope, all these things. And these are the offerings and the task list that we have selected. Okay. So now, if I want to change the status, simply I can select here and say
Okay.
edit status, and from here I can change the status. So now if
Okay.
this is assigned to me, I can say this is in progress, and if this has completed, I can say this is completed. And if there are any inputs that I might want to get it, so I will say this execution frozen. And when I get the information, I'll start again. So I'll change the status to in progress. Okay.
Okay.
If I'm facing some issue in terms of configurations, I can change status to completed with errors also. So which means
Okay.
that I'm working with Oracle. This I can add it in the comment section. So I can just add the notes and inform this that this is the issue that I'm facing. Okay, so all those things that I can do it here. So if
Okay.
I'm starting my setup now, so I'll change it to in progress. Okay,
Okay.
so I'm not adding this right now. Okay, so now, so how do I track my project as that? So I'll just say done. So this is the project that I created. So now
Yeah.
if I click this overview, so I can see at high level what are the modules that is being enabled, one thing,
Uh-huh.
and I can see what is started, what is in progress, and what is completed. If I
Okay.
want to look at completed with error, so I can see all those informations are available here. Okay,
Okay.
so this is by due date. If I want to track, I can check. So probably if any task that has crossed the due date, so I can see here. So nothing has crossed the due date because the one task that we have set up is 29th December. So
Hmm.
for which still I have another 5 days to complete. Okay, so I'm not seeing any information here. So if you see here the next week, so that is for 29th this thing. So we have this task that needs to be completed, so which is in the 100%. Okay, so if you see here, so this is in blue color, which is not started. So if you just hover over this, so you will see the status as not started because we did not change the status to in progress or completed. So once we complete the particular task, we will change the task and we will come back to the screen. So we will see the status as completed. Okay, so this is how basically we will track, and also I can track by task list, or if I want to track by a particular resource. So when I say resource, it is particular user that we are talking about. Okay. So if I want to track by particular resource, I can do that, and also by the assignment also I can track it. Okay. So these are the graphical representation that we can see in terms of assigning. So we assigned only to this user. So that's the reason if you see here, so we are seeing it's assigned to this user. And also I'll see the due date. It's on the next week I'll have to deliver this. Okay.
Okay. So Arun,
So
like typically the moment environment is provisioned, is it like the solution architects or the PM or project manager will take care of creating these users, assigning to roles, and changing these statuses in progress, or like, or these followed, or like, what is the
no, usually
process?
project manager or PMO or the solution architect, so they will not create it in the system. So basically, this is created by either the finance consultant or the supply chain senior
Okay.
consultant. But then the
Okay.
tracking is done by the managers, but the creation part they will not take care.
Okay. Okay. So, like, have you seen like the consultants, like, do they really use these statuses in progress, failed, completed with errors?
No,
Uh,
it is less likely. So we have
yeah,
this option, but it is less likely used because they
correct,
have other tools like Jira and these things,
correct,
so
correct.
which they will use to track their project. So, but
Okay.
Oracle has given as an option, but this is less likely used.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. And in the FSM UI, you talked about task list, right? So the one
Correct?
which are appearing with the folder yellow
Yeah,
box, so those are task list, right? And inside that, whatever is appearing, those are tasks.
yeah. On my I'll
Like for
just
example, here procurement is task list or financial is task list, is it?
no. This is offering, and
Offering, yeah,
whatever we are seeing here, this is task.
task.
And under this, if I see these, so these are the task list or the actual task. So this is offering.
That is offering. Which one is task list here?
So here, this is offering,
Yeah.
this is task, and this is task list. This is task list, and this is task list. So whatever you are seeing under this, so these are
Okay.
task lists basically.
Okay. And run user and role synchronization process. That is a task.
Yeah, this is the task, actual task that we will be
Okay.
performing.
Okay. Fine.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is about creating the project and managing the project. Okay. So
Yeah.
the next thing that we have is that, so we'll start with the basic configurations. Okay.
Okay.
So now in terms of, okay, I'll just open Excel.
Okay.
Okay, so now what are the prerequisites that I will need? First thing is that I will need my primary ledger in order to start my procurement or the supply chain side configurations. So I'll need firstly the primary ledger, and then I will need what do you call the business unit. Okay, and also from the procurement perspective, I will need the inventory organization. Okay, and then I will need certain item and the supplier. Okay, so these are the prerequisites for me. Okay, so to break this, so I'll just take this primary ledger. So now if I want to basically create this primary ledger, so I need four C's. Sorry, I need four C. Okay. So what are those four C? So first thing is currency, and second thing is calendar, and thirdly I have my chart of accounts, and then I have my accounting method or accounting convention. Okay, so now first thing is currency. So currency here it is INR. So I know very well that this is my currency. So which Oracle gives me by default. So I don't need to create anything there. But if at all it is not enabled, so probably I'll go to that screen and enable. But by default Oracle will give this with enabled option. Okay. So here I don't need to do anything. So I'll have to just attach this currency to my primary ledger setup. Okay. And then the second thing is calendar. So this is fiscal calendar that we are talking about, since this is for Indian entity. Okay. So then we have the chart of accounts. So probably I'll talk about in detail about this. But before that, so we have something called accounting method. Okay, so why do we need accounting method is that, so this basically defines whether I'm going to account this particular entry on the debit side or on the credit side. All those things are defined here. So the sequence of accounting is defined here at this level. Okay, so now for purchase order, let's take an example. So for PO, no accounting. Okay, and for receipt I will have accounting, and then for delivery I will need accounting. Okay, so now how will I derive this accounting? So anyway, I have a setup called tab which we will talk about later, but for now, so this tab will tell me how to derive this account code combination. Okay, so wherein I'll give a condition. If this condition matches, so what is the account that needs to be picked up? So that I will give it here in the tab setup in my procurement module. But this we are talking about how to understand whether this particular if this particular transaction is done. So whether I wanted to consider this as a debit or this needs to be considered as credit. So how do I define? If I'm doing the actual transaction, whether it should be debited or credited, and similarly if I'm canceling this or reversing this particular transaction, whether this should be considered as what do you call the debit or credit. So all those things are defined here. So now let's okay, before that let's understand what is chart of accounts And
Hey, Arun,
then, yeah.
I'm sorry. We'll take a step back here. But when you say primary ledger, does that mean it is a primary ledger, meaning it is a kind of holding transactions for the entire account, or like what is it?
Yeah, so primary ledger meaning it is nothing but the accounting repository. So now I'll just explain. So here I have my let's say the receipt accounting,
Okay,
okay, and then I have my costing. So let's take only these two modules for now. Okay, so I'm doing transaction here. Okay, so this transaction will be accounted. When I say accounted, so the transaction meaning I have my receipt entry. Okay, so let's say I'm saying the receipt date. Okay, and then the quantity. Okay, and then the sub inventory. Okay, so let's say that these are the primary details that I'm capturing. So
okay,
this I call this as an what do you call the transaction. Okay,
okay.
so now the accounting will not be similar to this. So I'll have the X account, so which will fall on my debit side. Okay, and again I'll have the second account which will fall on my let's say the credit leg. Okay,
Mhm.
so this is how my accounting information will look like, but this detailed information will not be present here. So now this accounting information what we are creating is nothing but the intermediary. So there isn't something called SLA, subledger accounting. So this is kind of an engine which will basically hold your transaction. That is, so this is the transaction that we have created. Okay, so now this account will be accounted in subledger module first, which means that SLA engine, which I talked about.
Mhm.
Okay, so this in terms of tables, we call this as SLA events. Okay, so this SLA events will have a source. So when I say source, it is our receipt accounting is the source. Okay, and for each one of it, we'll have SLA ID.
Okay.
Okay, so this ID is what we are referring to this particular transaction. So let
Mhm.
me just add a receipt number to this.
Okay.
Okay, so this receipt number will have a unique number in backend table. So that is what we are referring to the ID. Okay. So now, so there are two things in terms of ID. So we call this as SLA transaction ID or SLA event ID. So event ID is nothing but for this particular event. Okay, so that is receipt accounting, and SLA transaction ID is for this particular receipt number. Okay, so now this SLA transaction is basic for our accounting, because what, as I said, whatever the accounting information that we are talking about here, so that is first created here, and then this information is transferred to GL. So when I
Okay.
say GL, it is to the ledger, that is to our primary ledger. So now I'm creating this one transaction in my receipt accounting, so which I'm transferring it to general ledger. Again, I will have my costing module. So again, I'll have to transfer this transaction to GL, which means whichever module that I'm creating any transaction in the system, so this will be converted to my accounting information, and this accounting information will be sent to my primary ledger. So now this will stay as my accounting repository, which means that let's say I want to take data wherein I have booked this purchase order. So whether the items are received, my accrual data, if I want to look at it, so I will refer to a particular ledger and I'll refer to a particular account, and I can get the balance. But if I
Okay.
want to take the drill down or the breakup for this particular balance, then I will have to go back to my subledger module. It could be the receipt accounting to understand this balance consists of receipt number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So whatever the
Mhm.
count it is. So I'll have to drill down to my subledger module in order to understand that this is my breakup there, and this is how I derive this balance. So in a
Okay.
way that I will get this balance from my GL using primary ledger, but the breakup is here in my receipt accounting module. So which means,
Okay.
so whatever the transaction that we enter in the system, so that will be transferred to primary ledger.
Mhm.
So when I say all the transaction, it's all the accounting transaction that will be transferred to the primary ledger, all the general ledger module. Okay,
Okay.
so this primary ledger, so general ledger is a module where we will have all the primary ledger, but let's say I'm using this primary ledger. So let's assume I'm doing it for India and Australia. Okay,
Mhm.
so now I will have one primary ledger for India and one primary ledger for Australia.
Okay.
Okay, so now this India primary ledger will have information about this in what do you call, whatever the transaction that I did here for
Yeah.
India primary ledger, all those information I can find it here. So
Right.
this is in the general ledger module. So if I'm talking about general ledger, so this includes my IND primary ledger and Australia primary ledger. So both.
Yeah.
So in
Yeah.
GL, I'll have all the ledgers, and inside ledger, I'll have all the sub-ledger modules transaction, which means this accounting. So here, if you see, so these two I will find here. But the PO information, since I don't have any accounting impact here, so I will not see this information in the general ledger.
Okay.
Okay. So this is how we will understand that this is the primary ledger. So is this understandable? I mean the
Yeah.
concept of primary ledger?
Yeah. Yeah. It is
Okay.
understandable. So this is like usually created in the general ledger module of finance.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
like, do we also create it in procurement module also general ledger, or we'll
No, we
import it
will.
from there?
No, we will not create the primary ledger or the general ledger in our procurement. So it's
Okay.
just we will use it. So now I will say that, let's say my inventory unit is BP inventory unit.
Okay.
Okay, so this is the one that I'm creating. So now when I create this purchase order, so I will call my business unit. So if I have to call this business unit, I should make sure that I link it with a particular ledger, because unless I
Oh.
link it with the ledger, so this entry, that is receipt and delivery, so this will
Mhm.
not go to my primary ledger. So that is
Yeah.
why we are linking with our ledger. So that's the reason, if you see here, so we are trying to understand in a way that this is our structure, and unless I have this data in place, so I won't be able to complete or enter this transaction itself.
Yeah. Yeah. Got it. So like if customer has finance and procurement both modules,
Okay.
right? And then so they will create this primary ledger in the GL. Okay. You'll
Okay.
also create this in the procurement module?
No, GL we will not create in procurement module.
No, primary ledger. You'll
Yeah,
not
that's
create it
what
in
I'm saying.
procurement.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's what I'm saying. Primary ledger, so we'll not create it in procurement module. So
Okay.
anyway, we will have general ledger. So we will not have implementation wherein I will not have general ledger, but I will have procurement. So that will not
Oh,
go that way, because this, if I want to use this primary ledger option, I will need my general ledger subscription. So unless I
okay.
have a subscription, I will not be able to basically use my procurement. In a
Okay.
sense, I will not be able to link it basically. So
Correct.
this
Correct.
is linked with my general ledger model, the primary ledger setup.
Okay. So there are no customers who have taken only procurement then. That is
No,
not a.
no, that will not. Even Oracle will suggest you, without taking general ledger, you cannot go for procurement.
Got it.
Yeah. So maybe there will be a scenario wherein only general ledger can be taken, but without general ledger, no other module can be picked up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so that is about the primary ledger. So as I said, so the calendar is physical calendar. So we'll see how to create the calendar,
Yeah.
and the accounting method basically defines how this particular transaction, it would be receipt or the delivery or the inventory transfer. So whatever the transaction that we are talking about, so how this accounting entry should take place is defined here. So if I want to probably alter my accounting the way that I account the transaction, so I can customize this particular accounting method. So this we call it as SLA customization. Okay,
Okay.
so I'll just come back to this point again. So after discussing chart of accounts, so
Okay.
now what exactly is chart of accounts? So these are the components inside this chart of accounts. Okay. So on top I have a chart of account structure. So inside this so in short it is called as COA. Okay, so it is COA structure instance, and inside this I have segments. So inside this I have value set, and again inside this value set I have values. So this is my skeleton if I want to understand my chart of account structure. So now what exactly is chart of account structure and why do I need this chart of account structure? What if I don't have chart of account structure? So now here if you see, so we are talking about the receipt accounting information. Okay, so now let's say I am populating my let's say accrual account, receiving accrual account. Okay, so this we are talking about one account, but now if I want to account this particular transaction, it's not just the account that I can use. Oracle will not allow us to use only the GL account. So there are certain conditions in order to create the structure. So by mandatorily, I will need two segments. Okay, so that is our company and the natural account. So natural account is nothing but the GL account. That is our receiving accrual. Okay. So now this will work out if I'm not implementing fixed asset module. But if I'm using fixed asset module, so I will need my third segment as well. So in that case, it becomes mandatory to use my three segments. That is my company, my national account, and then the cost center. These are the three mandatory segments that needs to be used, and to the extent of 30 segments I can use. So minimum
Okay.
is 2 and maximum is 30. Okay. So now in real time, how a business will implement. So I'll just take one example here
Yeah.
to to make you understand. So let's
Yeah.
say this is into FMCG. Okay. So this particular entity, so they are into a business of manufacturing, which means the fast moving goods. Okay, so
Yeah.
now, so they have one on the one side they have the manufacturing process and selling and the purchasing process, and on the other side they have the financial part of it. So now when we talk about this accounting information, so firstly we will need to understand what are the information that we want to capture in the system. So when we say the information that we want to capture, so as we saw, so first thing is our company, and second thing is our cost center, okay, and third thing is our account. So these informations are already captured. So apart from this, so I will need intercompany. So now what exactly is intercompany is that. So now I have my inventory. let's say Chennai. Okay, and then I have my other inventory in, let's say, Hyderabad. Okay. So now there is an request from Hyderabad to send this particular item. Okay, so now this entity is under primary ledger India. Okay, and then under this I have these two entities. Okay, so before that, I will just introduce you the BSV. So to understand in simple terms, BSV is nothing but my company value. So it is not necessarily that I will need this to be always as a company value. It depends whether I am using the company. Let's say this is not into FMCG. So let me give you other example. So this we are trying to implement for the construction industry. So if I'm using construction industry, so definitely I will have project in place. So I will need this project segment also. So now, how do I define that I will need project segment or not? It depends on the profitability that this particular business wants to take. So if
Okay.
I want to understand my profitability, so when I say profitability, it's the expense minus revenue. So let's say
Mm.
my revenue and expense. So here my revenue is 10,000 and my expense is 8,000. Okay, so for this particular project, the profit that I made is 2000. So if business wants to understand this, so I will have to include this because in the order management, I will have to include this project segment value in order to derive this 2000. And in the procurement module, I'll have to include this project segment in order to understand the total expenses that I have made for this particular project is 8,000. Okay, so this is how we will understand. So now, if for this particular project, I want to transfer the item from Chennai to Hyderabad because this project that I'm doing is in Hyderabad. Okay, so now I have material here. I'm sending this to this particular entity. So now this, even though this is within the entity, so I call this as an intercompany transaction. So why do I call this as an intercompany transaction? Because I have one ledger, but I have two BSV, that is two company. So company one and company two. So between this, if I'm doing transaction, so this I call it as intercompany transaction. Okay. So for this, I
Okay.
need this particular segment called intercompany, and then the project, of course, to understand the profitability. So this segments basically defines how do I track my profitability, and if I have my requirement to, probably, let's say I have an compliance requirement to understand state-wise revenue. So I will include state as a segment. So when I say state, so this is not just the Tamil Nadu or Hyderabad that I will have here. So it is the value. So let's say 32 is for Tamil Nadu. So this is GST specific state code that I'm trying to implement here. Okay, so I'll say
Okay.
32. So when I select the state segment value, so I'll select 32 if I'm doing transaction in Chennai. Okay, so again, if I'm selecting Hyderabad, so I'll select the TS, that is Telangana state. Okay, so
Okay.
accordingly, I can select. So this this is what I'm referring to segments. So when I say segments, so these are the values that I'm capturing when I enter a particular transaction. Okay, so now this will tell me this is the company that I'm making this transaction, and under this cost center I'm making this transaction, and this is the account I'm using. And if there is no intercompany transaction, always it will be null. And then this is the project that I'm making this expense or the revenue. Okay, and inside the state I'm making this particular transaction. So this will capture your required information so that for the reporting purpose you can very well use this particular information. So one thing is on your reporting need, and second thing, as I said, your compliance requirement, that is your state. Okay, and then if you want to capture your basic information like national account and these things, so these are the things that you will look at. So now it's not only these segments that you will include. Apart from that, also you will add future one and future two.
Okay.
Why do we use so any implementation? It is best practice to give these two segments because today I might be using these segments, that is what you call 6 segments. Okay, so now probably tomorrow I might want to extend to let's say the location
Yeah.
segment, and probably I wanted to capture the territory by sales territory also. Okay, so I wanted to add 2 segments tomorrow. So for that, so once this chart of accounts is created, I will not be able to change it. So today itself, I'm making this change, saying that future one and future two, so that I can use it at later point in time, saying that this is my segment one for location and segment two for territory. So this way, I can utilize my segments in terms of reporting need, complaints need, all those informations. Okay. So this is my segment. So now, how do I get values to my segment is that using this value set. So what is
Okay.
value set? So value set is nothing but a validation that we put in the system in terms of selecting the information or entering the information. So when I say selecting the information, so let me take the company as an example. Okay. So company, let's say 10, 20,
Mhm.
and 30.
Okay.
So now let me take this as 2 different company. So just for understanding. So I have my Chennai business, I have my Hyderabad business, and then I have my Mumbai business. I have created as 3 different company. Okay. So now here if you see, so this is 10 that I'm entering in the system when I'm creating this receipt entry. Okay. So
Mhm.
now if I want to, let's say, enter it manually. So today I'll say this is 10. Tomorrow I might not remember that if I have created with 10 or 11 or 12. So I can enter whatever I wish to. Okay.
Okay.
So which I don't want to have it. So for this, I'm having something called a validation. So this validation, so I can have this as an independent, or if I want to have this as an dependent, I can have it, or if I want to have this as a free text, I can have this, and if I want to pull it from tables, I can have this. So these are the
Okay.
validations that I have. So now free text, of course, this is whatever I wanted to enter, I can enter. It could be 10, 20, 30, anything I can enter for the company Chennai, which I will
Okay.
not use it. I will not recommend it because this is not an consistent data entry.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I have the independent. So independent is something, it is not depending on any value, but this is kind of a list of value or LOV. Okay.
Okay.
So which means unless I add these 3 values in my master. So when I say master, it is nothing but the chart of account value set that I'm referring to. Okay. So these 3 should be there in the system created already. So unless I have it, so I will not be able to use it here when I enter my receipt transaction. Okay.
Okay.
So now let's say I have created this 30 as a new entity. Okay, but now I have not created this yet in the system. So, but I'm trying to create the receipt accounting entry. So whether I'll be able to account this particular transaction? No, we will not be able to account it because system will tell us that the value 30 that we have entered is invalid because this is not present in the system. Okay, so that's the use of having independent. Okay, so now we have something called dependent, which means this depends on some other value. So
Okay.
let's say I am having this cost center. Okay, so this cost center depends on my intercompany. So let's say
Mm-hmm.
if I select intercompany as 00, okay, which is my default value. So I should be seeing cost center as 10. That is my let's say inventory, and let's say my finance, HR, and IT. Okay, so I wanted to see all these values when I select this value. If I select, let's say I'm selecting intercompany 10. I don't want to see finance. So in that case, I'll be seeing only these three. That is inventory, HR, and IT. Finance I will not see. So which I'm able to do it basically based on this validation called dependent. Okay.
Okay.
And yeah, free text we have seen, and table is something we are storing the information in table. So similar
Mm-hmm.
to what we have created manually here, or through upload also we can do it. So similar to that, so we will have to create it in the table. So unless I have the data in table, so I'll not be able to do this particular addition. Okay, so that's about the tables.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
so that's the use of having the value set. So if I go back to this, so we understood the segments, value set, and now the values. So values meaning this one I'm referring to. So now this will be
Mm-hmm.
added to the value set. So if I want to say this transaction that I'm entering is for Chennai or Hyderabad, it is defined based on this value. So these are my supporting configurations, but actually in the transaction, I'm using this value. Okay, so for this, I'm
Okay.
creating these three. So this is the structure to have this, what do you call, the chart of account. But this chart of account structure on the finance side, this is crucial because once this is created, so we'll not be able to edit or change anything. So if I want to change the structure, so which will be completely re-implementation, will not be able to
Mm.
do anything. So that's the reason to
Okay.
make sure that we accommodate the future requirement also. So we are adding future one and future two.
Okay. And this chart of account you have to define in general ledger only.
Yeah, general ledger only.
And this has to be always it's a master is a general ledger application only usually, or it will be some other third party application also from there. The
No, even from there we can integrate. So in terms of integration, we can do it. So that is not an issue. So we also have an option of FBD, Excel based option. So
yeah.
wherein if we are able to get the data in our FBD format, so
Right.
we can even import those data. So we'll just get it as an email or some
Okay.
other location in the file-based location. So from there also we can import these chart of account values. So that shouldn't be an issue. We can do that.
Okay. And is this like sequence sequentially it has to be there like cost center after that only natural account and after that intercompany, or order does not matter.
No, order does not matter. So this
Okay.
basically depends on the customer's requirement. But as a
Oh,
practice, we will suggest in this order. So first is our entity or the company. So then the department or the cost center. So then natural account, then intercompany, then the project or any other segment that we wanted to have.
okay.
So this will be the sequence, but one of our project also have seen it. So this is not the format that they wanted. They wanted company first, and then they wanted to have the national account, and then they wanted intercompany, then the cost center. So this is the
Correct.
sequence they asked. So we can go for any sequence as per the customer requirement, but it's not that this is the one that we will use.
Okay.
Okay.
What exactly is natural account when you're saying like what you
Natural
refer?
account is nothing but the GL account. So now here if you see, so when I receive this particular item,
Yeah.
so I will book my receiving accrual, okay, and to the this thing accrual to my receiving account. So now this receiving accrual account is created as my natural account. So
Mm.
45789. So this is my GL account.
Okay.
So which explains this is my receiving accrual account. Okay,
Okay.
so
Okay.
how will I understand using this natural account? So this is nothing but your qualifier. Maybe I'll show you in the system so you will understand. So this natural account is nothing but your GL account that we are referring to. So as I said, if we are making transaction in the system, so in a specific module we will understand, but this we are doing it in order to transfer this entry, this transaction to general ledger. But this information cannot be transferred to general ledger as it is, because general ledger will understand in a way that these are the combinations, that is in account code combination. So this we call it as account code combination. That is your, let's say your company is 10 and the cost center is 00 and your natural account is 45789.
Okay.
Okay, and intercompany is 00 and future is 00.00. So this is your account code combination. So which means for this receiving accrual account, so if GL has to understand this, it should be in this particular format.
Okay. Okay. So this is like a heart of the business chart of
Correct,
accounts.
correct, correct.
Because since like we are explaining about the intercompany, I was just thinking about the one common example, Tata organization, right? They are into
Yeah,
pharmaceutical, healthcare,
yeah,
automobiles,
right,
and even retail, several companies, right? And within
correct,
those
correct,
vertical, within those companies, they have different verticals also. So
correct, correct.
those all can be defined in the
Yeah, correct,
intercompany project, and okay.
correct, correct.
Okay.
Okay, so so that's about the chart of account structure. Okay, so now
Yeah.
this chart of account structure will be added to our primary ledger. So that is how
Okay.
system will understand that if I do this transaction, that is receipt accounting. So this is the account code combination that I should pick. So from where? From this chart of account structure instance. So structure and the
Um,
structure instance are almost same. The difference is that so whatever I create in the structure, so I will attach in the structure instance. Meaning, let's say here I have 10 segment, but I have a requirement that for India I have different structure and for Australia I have a different structure. So now
mm,
this for India probably I can use let's say 6 segments, but for Australia I wanted to use 8 segments. So I can use this 10 segment to split into multiple instances. So now this instance is what I will attach it with the ledger. Okay. So this is how basically our ledger and the financial modules works basically based on the accounting
yeah.
information that we pass from our subledger module, like either it could be receipt accounting or the costing. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is basic. So that is to create our primary ledger. So that is one our prerequisite. So now talking about the structure. So how Fusion has its structure is that. So on
Mhm.
top I have my enterprise. Okay.
Okay.
So below that I have legislative data group. So this legislative data group, this is not mandatory. So this is optional. So as I said, if I want to create this particular entity for multiple regions or the multiple countries, So that is when I'll bring this legislative data group. If I'm implementing it only for India, so I will not need this legislative data group. In that case, this is optional. Okay, so I'll say enterprise. So enterprise here it is nothing but let's say VP group of companies.
Okay.
So now under this I have line of business. So let's say I have manufacturing of let's say I'm taking the same example. So I'm taking pharma and then probably I'll say construction and then probably I'll say retail. Okay, and
Okay.
then okay, let me take only these three line of business for now. Okay, so these are the line of business that I have.
Yeah.
So now this enterprise will be BP group of companies. Okay, so since I don't have any requirement to have it for a different country because this business I'm doing it inside India, so I'm not creating legislative data group. Okay, so now I have my ledger. So there are different ways to handle this. So either I can create separate ledger for my pharma, construction and retail, or I can create one primary ledger for India primary ledger. And what I will do is that, so in the company, so here if you see, if I come down, so I have my segments. So now the segments that I have is that company cost center, natural account, these things. Okay, so now I will add one more segment called line of business. So here what I will do is that, so I will, let's say I'll have one as an pharma, one as an construction, one as retail. Okay, so now how pharma is performing and how construction is performing and how retail is performing. I'll be able to take the data if I have this in my chart of account structure or if I'm using here in my primary ledger as three different ledgers. So here also I can use my financial reports. Okay, so, so there is something called FRS, so wherein I can build my own report. So that is kind of a drag and drop. So there I can consolidate this and see the total balance. And or if I want to look at my only probably let's say pharma balance, so I can see. Okay, so this is how we can define. So there is no one solution for any problem. So there could be one or two solutions for this. So similarly for this, if you see, so I can handle it at ledger or I can handle it at this thing also. Okay. So the one I have here is that primary ledger. Okay. And then I have something called legal entity. So now what is legal entity? So legal entity is nothing but the legal registration that we are talking about here. So now for
Mhm.
here, so in this case, if you see, so for pharma, I will have one legal entity registered. So now
Mhm.
since we have the GST that is implemented across the country, so I might register this as one entity for pharma and one for my construction and one for my retail. Okay. But if I'm talking about US scenarios, so probably for pharma, so I might have one in California, one in New York. So I might
Yeah.
have different registrations as well. But since
Right.
we are talking about India scenario, so we are seeing this as one registration because this mandates as one registration. So my GST number will be same, only the first two digits that's going to change. Okay. So in this case, this is nothing but my registration that we are talking about here. Okay. So I have my enterprise that is group of companies, then I have my primary ledger, then I have my legal entity. Okay. And then I have my business unit. So now what exactly is business unit is that in terms of definition, this is an entity or the business which either generates revenue or it incurs expenses. Okay.
Okay.
So this is what we are referring to business unit. So if I'm creating a sales order, so which will generate a revenue to me, and if I'm creating a purchase order which will incur expense to my business, so this is what we are referring to the business unit. Okay. And below that, I have the inventory. Inventory are, of course, we know where we store the items and this thing, and the SBU sub inventory unit. Okay. So this is how my structure will look like. So on top, I'll have my enterprise, and then I'll have my primary ledger, legal entity, business unit, inventory organization, and sub inventory unit. So
Okay.
now this enterprise and legislative data group. So this will be created by HCM, and primary ledger, legal entity, and business unit will be created by finance, and inventory or sub inventory. So these things will be created by us. Okay.
The
So this
inventory
is
org SB will be created by?
I mean the supply chain us.
Oh, okay, okay,
We will be creating this.
okay.
Okay. Yeah. So
So this like what you are explaining, this is a COA configuration you're explaining or in
no,
generic
no,
like okay.
no structure.
Okay.
So if we are talking about the fusion structure,
Mhm.
when I say structure, which means that if I want to enter a single transaction in the system, so how system understands that these are the list of configurations that needs to be in
Okay.
place in the system. So first thing is that I will need the enterprise, and then
Right.
I'll need this primary ledger. Then I'll need the legal entity, then
Legal
the business
entity.
unit, and then the. So this is what I'm
Got it.
referring to the structure or the sequence you can call it.
Got it. Got it.
Okay. Yeah. So these things should be in place. So once these are created, so then I can go ahead and create my inventory R and a sample item and a few suppliers in the system. So once these things are created, so then I can start my configurations in my procurement module. Okay. So
Okay.
these are the basic prerequisites in terms of starting the configurations for me in the procurement module.
Got
Okay.
it. Okay.
Uh, okay. Yeah.
Mm.
So probably we'll go into the system and I'll show from where we start this transaction.
Okay. So Arun, like, have you seen any such scenarios where, like, if we talk about the Bear as an organization, Bear has a is presence is in across globe. So
Okay.
Bear Europe and Bear India, and they want to maintain both ledgers differently. So can there be two ledgers, Bear Global
Yes.
and Bear India? Those
Yeah.
those two can be called as primary ledger, or it is like primary, secondary ledger like that?
No, no, those are still primary ledger.
Okay.
Okay, I'll just explain what is primary and secondary. So now here, I'll just take the same example which you gave. Okay. So
Okay.
now I am operating in India,
Yeah.
and I'm operating in China,
Yeah.
and I'm operating in Australia. Okay,
True.
so now if you see here for India, I have one primary ledger, so which I
Mhm.
call it as IND primary ledger,
Okay.
and this I call it as CHN primary ledger, and AUS primary ledger. So
Mhm.
all these three will be still called as primary ledger. So
Okay.
now my primary business is put up in China. Okay. So
Mhm.
now probably I don't want to see the information in the currency or the in the representation of this particular region, either it could be India or Australia. So I
Mhm.
want to see the data in China. So what
Right.
I will do, sir, so I will create my secondary ledger, which means Here in the secondary ledger, I will not create the transaction. So transaction will be still created in the primary ledger, but
Okay.
I will run certain process to understand the financial data in different representation. So when I say different representation, it could be different currency, or it could be in different calendar, or it could be in different chart of account structure also.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
So that is what we are referring to the secondary ledger. So now, along with secondary ledger, we have something called reporting ledger. So
Mm-hmm.
what is reporting ledger? So reporting ledger meaning if only my currency is different. So let's say this transaction is entered in IND primary ledger in INR,
Yeah.
but then I don't want to see it in INR. I want to see in yuan. Okay, so in this case, I will use reporting ledger and give this as an currency, and I will convert this into China, I mean Chinese
Oh,
currency. Okay,
okay.
so I will not see the data in INR. So which I can use this option called reporting ledger.
I see.
So now I have another thing called calendar. So probably, so in this case, calendar might not vary much, but let's say I have different structure. So in a way, for this, I have probably, let's assume that I have company, I have department at the cost center, and natural account, that is GL account, and then intercompany uh, project, location, feature 1 and feature 2. So this is my structure for China. So
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to India, so I don't have the same structure. So I have this, okay, and then I have only these two.
Okay.
So now what I will do is that, so I have something called mapping. So I'll have to
Mm-hmm.
do COA mapping, because this, if you see, this data is inconsistent, because here I will say these four values are fine, but here these two are missing, that is project and location.
Right.
But whereas if I want to understand it correctly, I will need also these two, or I'll have to pass this mapping. So now,
Mm-hmm.
in a way, I'll say mapping. So I'll have this company and this company. If these two are matching, so this is the transaction details that I want to pass. I'll give a mapping to this,
Perfect.
and I'll say these two are not required for this, and I'll pass only these information.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this is how I'll build this mapping. Okay, so now once this mapping is created, so then I will use this particular option to convert the transactions to China format. That is, in this format I'll look at the data.
Okay.
So for this I will use secondary ledger.
Mm-hmm.
Which means in these two, if you see, we are not entering any transaction. We are just showing the data in different representation. It could be your currency, it could be your calendar, it could be your chart of account. It's just
Okay.
the different representation that we are using, not the transactions entry.
Right.
Transactions are entered only in primary ledger.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, yeah, so that's about this different ledgers that you have. So the to answer your question, so you can have multiple primary ledgers as well
Yeah.
for
Got it.
different matters. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, so we'll take a pause now and we'll connect probably
Sure.
by 5.
Five for evening.
Yeah, maybe I'll see if I can connect a bit early. If possible,
That is
we'll.
also fine. I'm available today. So
Okay.
even if you are also available, we can connect for longer time also.
Okay.
It's up to you. Like I'm available. Okay.
Okay.
Let
Okay.
me.
Okay.
So when we'll connect then?
Yeah, just give me some time. So I'll just